Hello, everyone, and welcome. Today, we're going to delve into something a bit darker, exploring some true stories that really get under your skin. These aren't made-up horror tales. They're real experiences, things that actually happen to people, and they tend to linger. We'll be recounting 10 of these accounts, trying to capture the suspense, the fear, the sheer strangeness of it all. Think of it as stepping into the shadows of everyday life for a moment. So settle in and listen closely. Some of these are pretty intense. Okay, our first story. It starts on a kid's 12th birthday, usually a happy day, right? This young person is heading to the bike shop with their family. They're about 10 minutes out of town. And this old man approaches them, just randomly. And he looked, well, the word used was creepy. He looks straight at the birthday kid and asks, "You buying a bike?" The kid's a bit taken aback, maybe a little scared, but says yeah. Then the man gets really emphatic, saying they must get a helmet and wear it, like all the time. The family, understandably, they just sort of labeled him a weirdo, and moved on, tried to shake it off. But that wasn't the end of it, not even close. A few hours later, the kid's out riding their new bike. Just in the park, they take a tumble, not a bad one, just a small fall onto the grass. And as they're getting up, guess who's standing right there? The same man. And he's looking like really disappointed, shaking his head. Then he points his finger right at the kid and says, "I told you to wear a helmet." Can you imagine? The kid was terrified, just pedaled home as fast as their legs could carry them. And here's the truly unsettling part. Of the person telling this story, they moved like 40 or 50 miles away. Years have passed. But they still see this man just every once in a while. So even though they don't believe in things like guardian angels or, anything supernatural, that persistence and an unexplained figure showing up again and again, even across distance, what does that do to someone psychologically?
It's profoundly disturbing. What you're describing taps into how our minds latch onto patterns, especially unsettling ones. Even if it's coincidence, the repetition creates this feeling of being watched or singled out. It's like the unease becomes its own reality. The brain struggles to dismiss it even rationally. That constant low-level dread, seeing him again, it really blurs the line between, coincidence and something else entirely, something you can't quite name.
Yeah, it's like your mind won't let it go. Okay, speaking of the mind under pressure, our next story is about exactly that. Someone was having a really rough time. Breakup, incredibly stressful job, hurried move into a new place, just overloaded. They end up sleeping on an air mattress in this totally empty, dark living room. All their stuff is gone. So they're right on the edge of sleep. You know that state where thoughts just drift randomly. And suddenly, cutting through the quiet, a voice, clear as anything, described as flat and monotone. And it says, I've just cut him open. Oh, if you can hear us. They snapped awake instantly, heart pounding. Nobody there, of course, just the empty room. The realization hits it must have been an auditory hallucination. But for those few seconds, it felt, quote, absolutely real. And the eerie emptiness of the new place just amplified that terror. That sounds incredibly vivid. What happens when stress mixes with that half-asleep state?
That state is called the hypnagogic state, that threshold between wakefulness and sleep. Our brain's normal reality testing filters are kind of lowered then. Add severe stress to that mix, and the mind can conjure things up vividly. It's often anxieties or fears manifesting as sensory experiences, hearing voices, sometimes seeing things. It feels external, absolutely real, like the story describes. But it's usually the mind's own turmoil, sort of, projecting itself onto the quiet environment. Very frightening experience.
Frightening is an understatement. Wow. Okay, shifting from internal dread to very real external danger. Story number 3. This person is riding their bike home late at night, and a guy approaches them, described as a big guy with sunglasses, which is odd at night. He stops the rider and asks, "Do you mind if I ask you some questions?" Plural questions. That word, questions, immediately set off alarm bells for the rider, made them really uneasy. So they kind of stammered, "No, sorry, I have to go," and started pedaling away quickly. They get to the next block, stop at a red light, and risk a look back. The man is running, full tilt, right towards them, only about 20 feet away. Pure panic. The rider floors it on the bike, but the guy is fast. He actually gets within maybe 5 feet of them. They manage to pull away, ride like crazy for 3 or 4 blocks, look back again. He's still chasing them, just relentlessly running after them down the street. The narrator says, "They never pedaled so hard in my life all the way home." That terror of being pursued, it's primal, isn't it?
Absolutely primal. It ignites that immediate fight or flight response. But the unknown element here makes it so much worse. You don't know why you're being chased, what the person wants. It's not just physical danger. It's the psychological horror of being targeted, of losing control. That relentless pursuit without any clear reason, it can be deeply traumatizing. It leaves you with that terrifying, why me, question forever.
The not knowing why. Yeah, that's terrifying. Okay, Next up, a story that proves you should always, always trust your gut, especially on the road. This person is on a solo cross-country drive, family reunion, but terrible weather, a huge accident on the highway. They get massively delayed, like 5 hours behind schedule. They're exhausted, desperately need a shower or a bathroom. So they pull off onto a state road, find this little strip motel, kind of out of the way, red flags immediately. The place looks small, run down, dirty, check in, through a tiny window. The guy behind the window, he sort of eyes up the narrator, who's college-aged, asks point blank, traveling alone. She goes to hand over her ID and card, but he stops her. Cash only, insists on it. Her gut is screaming at this point. But she's exhausted, desperate. She manages to scrape together the cash. He just tosses her the key. The room, just as bad, dirty, barely bigger than the bed. She uses the bathroom, then, just on instinct, flips up the mattress corner, sees signs of bed bugs. Ugh. Then a cockroach scurries past. That's the final straw. She decides, nope, not staying in there. She'll just try and sleep in the back hatch of her SUV in the parking spot she paid for. Fast forward to around 3 a.m. She wakes up, hears someone outside on a phone. It's the check-in guy. He finishes his call, walks straight over to her assigned room, the one she wasn't in, unlocks it, and goes inside. The lights stay off. A minute or two passes. He comes back out, slams the door shut, cursing. And now he's with another guy, someone she hadn't seen before. They talk angrily for a second, and the check-in guy walks right towards her SUV. She ducks down, throws a shirt over her head just in case. He tries the handle locked. He peers into the backseat windows. Luckily, her windows are tinted, and the car's messy from the trip. He doesn't see her hidden in the hatch. The two men then walk off towards the edge of the parking lot, talking and pointing towards a diner across the street. That's her chance. While they're distracted, she scrambles into the driver's seat, keys in, starts the engine, and just floors it out of there. The men turn, startled, as she speeds away. She calls friends back home, tells them what happened, but keeps it from family initially. Later, like 3 weeks later, they figure out the motel's name, something like Mountaintop Motel or Mountainside Motel. They call the local police, and the police tell her that motel had been officially closed down just days before she even arrived. Wow. Just, wow. That gut feeling literally saved her. Can you talk about that instinct?
Yes, absolutely. That gut feeling, and often our subconscious processing warning signs faster than our conscious mind can. It's called interoception sensing internal signals. Her brain was picking up on all those red flags, the isolation, the guy's behavior, the cash only, the dirty room, things that individually might be dismissed, but together scream danger. It triggered a physiological alarm. Her body knew something was wrong even before she could fully articulate why. Trusting that instinct, even when tired and wanting convenience, was crucial. It likely prevented something terrible.
It's a chilling reminder to listen to that inner voice.
Right.
Okay, this next one, it's really disturbing. It's about when a child's imagination turns out to be terrifyingly real. The narrator had a younger sister, about 7. This sister apparently had a crazy imagination, always making up stories, aliens, teddy bears coming alive, that kind of thing. So she starts telling her older sibling, who was maybe 10 or 11 then, about this evil truck driver who was supposedly stalking her friend, and then started stalking her. Given her track record, the older sibling and their parents just didn't believe her, figured it was another made-up story. Until one day, they're playing outside in the front yard, and this truck drives up the street. An old Mercedes truck, described as falling apart from all the rust. The little sister sees it and completely loses it, starts freaking out, shouting, "That's him, that's the evil truck driver." The older sibling looks and sees the driver, described as a seriously evil-looking dude, and he's just pointing at them, at the kids. In that instant, everything changes. The older sibling realizes, quote, she didn't make this one up, that she's for real. They grab the little sister's hand, run inside crying, lock the door, terrified. Their mom was out shopping, so they were alone for about 10 more minutes. The absolute horror comes years later. They found out who that man was. He was identified as a repeat offender child rapist who eventually committed suicide after being charged for another assault. That moment. When fantasy becomes hideous reality, what does that do to a child? And how often are kids' fears dismissed like this?
It's horrifying on so many levels. That moment of realization for the older sibling is just shattering. Innocence completely destroyed. Children often perceive threats differently, maybe expressing them in ways that sound fantastical to adults. But the underlying fear can be absolutely grounded in reality. Dismissing those fears because they sound like stories can have tragic consequences. It highlights how crucial it is to listen, truly listen, to children when they express fear or unease, even if it sounds strange. The long-term impact of knowing that monster was real and was targeting them, that's profound trauma.
Truly chilling. Okay, let's move to something slightly different, touching on premonition and just Bizarre coincidence. The narrator had a friend who'd visit every couple of weeks, lived about 90 minutes away. One Friday night, it's late, maybe 1 a.m., they're driving on a bypass, heading towards the main highway. Out of the blue, the friend gets startled, just jumps in his seat, and then says something really weird and morbid, like, "Whoa, for a second I thought we'd both died and we'd be driving down the bypass forever." He even made a dark joke about haunting other cars if they were ghosts. They kind of awkwardly dropped it and got onto the highway. About 10 minutes pass. They're driving along, go over a slight hill, a crest in the road, and the driver has to slam on the brakes, hard, because there's a man standing right in the middle of the road, directly in their path. He basically just jumped out. The driver swerves violently into the other lane, just missing him. Heart-pounding, I imagine. But it gets weirder. They look in the rearview mirror. The man isn't just standing there. He's getting into a car parked on the shoulder. Then he pulls out and starts following them, tailgating them down most of the highway. Totally freaked out now, the driver decides to take a random, unplanned exit just to get away. As they signal, the man behind them puts his blinker on too, like he's going to follow them off the exit. But then, at the last second, he swerves back into the main lane and just speeds off down the highway. Gone. Understandably, the narrator said they didn't sleep much that night. That connection. The weird comment, then the near miss. How do we process that?
It's a classic example of how our brains desperately seek meaning, especially after unsettling events. That eerie timing feels significant. It's likely a case of confirmation bias after the fact. The morbid thought was probably random, but because it was followed by such a specific dangerous event, the mind links them, creates a narrative. It feels like a premonition, even if it's statistically just a very strange and disturbing coincidence. The psychological impact is real, though. It leaves you questioning, feeling like forces beyond your understanding might be at play, even if logic says otherwise.
Hard to just brush off as coincidence when it happens like that. Right, story number 7. This one is about how close disaster can be and how a child's actions can make all the difference. A 9-year-old is just in their room. They start hearing noises like moaning and faint cries for help. Their first thought, it's their brother playing a video game. Apparently there was a game called Perfect Dark where characters scream bloody murder, so they figured it was that. They go check their brother's room. No one's there. But they can still hear the sounds, faint, but definitely there. Following the sound, they end up at the door leading to the garage, and suddenly they get this awful feeling. Their gut twisted. They open the garage door and find their mom on the concrete floor with a puddle of blood around her head. She'd been up in the attic, tripped somehow, and fallen about 12 feet onto the garage floor. She's barely conscious. Her only words are, "Get Dad." The child runs downstairs, finds their dad and brother watching a movie. The TV is turned up really loud, a blaring volume level. They couldn't have heard anything. The kid yells, "Mom's hurt, go into the garage." The dad's eyes go wide and he just sprints upstairs. Thankfully, the mom ended up being okay. A broken collarbone and a concussion, but she recovered. But later, she told the child something chilling. She said she was just about to lose consciousness right when they found her. If the child hadn't heard those faint cries, hadn't investigated, she would have passed out. And with the loud TV downstairs, it could have been at least 2 hours before anyone else found her. The narrator says thinking about it still makes their heart skip a beat, that thin line.
It's a stark illustration of that thin line, yes. And the child's response, moving from assuming it's a game to recognizing distress and acting decisively. That's remarkable under pressure. For the mother, knowing how close she came, that specific detail of nearly losing consciousness makes the event incredibly terrifying in retrospect. It leaves a lasting imprint, that sense of vulnerability, but also immense gratitude for that intervention. It reinforces how fragile life can be and how critical those moments of awareness are.
Absolutely critical. Okay, number 8 is short, but incredibly visceral. It's about witnessing extreme trauma as a child. The narrator remembers an explosion when they were young, a chemical plant down the street from their house. Not huge, they said, but a big scene. They were sitting on their porch playing a Game Boy, looked up because of the commotion, and saw 2 men on fire, their skin practically melting off their bodies, running down the street and shrieking like banshees. Just unimaginable horror. The aftermath was just as stark. One of them collapsed and died on the spot, and the other one kept running for God knows how long. Just running, on fire, the impact. The narrator simply says, "I had nightmares for weeks." Witnessing that, how does that shape someone?
Witnessing something that graphic, that horrific, especially as a child, it's deeply traumatizing. The developing brain isn't equipped to process that level of visceral horror. The imagery, the sounds describe skin melting, shrieking like banshees. It bypasses rational thought and gets seared into memory. It fundamentally shatters a child's sense of safety and predictability in the world. It's not just nightmares. It's a violent introduction to the reality of extreme suffering and mortality, a profound loss of innocence.
A terrible thing for anyone, especially a child, to see. Our ninth story is about senseless violence, a true crime account. Two teenagers are hanging out in front of a house. They decide to order pizza. When the Domino's delivery woman arrives, they shoot her and steal $22. The person recounting this adds these heartbreaking details. They saw her delivery van later, saw the stuffed animals and her world's best grandma sticker on the back. Just makes the senselessness hit even harder. Apparently there was a third teen involved, slightly older, who wasn't there for the shooting itself but allegedly talked them into it. The perpetrators were young, 15, 16, and 18. They had robbed delivery drivers before, but this was the first time they killed someone. The account ends by saying they were all caught and found guilty, but the act itself was over $22.
It's tragically common, this kind of impulsive, callous violence, especially when group dynamics are involved. The amount, $22, highlights the utter devaluation of human life. There's often a diffusion of responsibility in groups, a lack of empathy, maybe influenced by substances or just poor impulse control. It escalates quickly. It also underscores the vulnerability of people just doing their jobs, like delivery drivers. A truly senseless loss driven by, well, it's hard to even comprehend the motivation.
Senseless is the right word. Okay, our final story tonight, number 10. And it's about a sound people aren't meant to make. About 7 years ago, early one morning, the narrator and their whole household were woken up by screaming. But not just any screaming, it was much more agonized than anything you'd expect. The voice sounded raged, like it had been screaming for days on end. Primal. They lived out in the sticks, so their first thought, maybe, hopefully, was a bear attack, something explainable in a way. They called the police and found out dispatch was getting calls about the exact same sounds from almost 9 kilometers away. The sound was traveling that far. The truth came out later, and it's horrific. The screams belonged to a gas station attendant. He was being dragged on a stolen car up and down the main highway by 2 people, reportedly high, who had run him over simply because he tried to get them to pay for their gas. His name was Grant Deptia. The narrator's final thought on hearing those sounds. People aren't meant to make sounds like that. It's kind of agony.
Hearing something like that, it fundamentally challenges your perception of human suffering or cruelty. Our brains are wired to respond to distress calls, but that level of sustained agony, it's almost beyond comprehension. It bypasses empathy and triggers a visceral horror. Knowing the source, the sheer brutality and degradation involved, it shatters any lingering sense of security. It's a sound that likely haunts everyone who heard it, a reminder of the absolute depths of depravity humans are capable of, a sound you can't unhear.
A truly horrifying end to our collection tonight. We've walked through 10 stories, 10 glimpses into real-life darkness. From eerie figures to moments of sheer terror, violent acts, near misses. They all remind us that horror isn't just in movies or books. It exists right here in the everyday world. So what do we take away from this? Maybe just a reminder of how fragile things can be, how important intuition is? And maybe to look a bit closer at the shadows sometimes. It makes you wonder, doesn't it? What unsettling moments have stuck with you, reminding you that reality can be stranger and scarier than fiction. Thank you for joining us for this unsettling exploration tonight. If these stories resonated with you, sent a chill down your spine, maybe give us a like, share it with someone else who appreciates these darker truths. And please consider subscribing to our channel, Horror Docs, for more content like this.
These accounts certainly linger. They remind us to stay aware, perhaps, and to acknowledge the mysteries and potential dangers that lie just beneath the surface of the ordinary.
We really appreciate you listening. We hope you'll join us again for our next dive into the unknown. Until then, stay curious and keep an eye on the shadows. Goodbye.